I'm Marianne. I'm 45 years old, and I'm on a diet in anticipation of the end of holiday, since I gained 3 kilograms from overindulging in gourmet cuisine at the start of the year. If I lose 3 kilograms now, it won't be a problem if I gain 3 kilograms over the prolonged trip. Is that right? Is that right? Isn't that what the goal is? Hey, you had to be kidding me. It's a pleasant conundrum, with an abundance of delicious food from Christmas until New Year's. It's probable that I'll buy myself some Valentine's Day chocolates. Sorry, I'm drooling a little. I think I'm going to put on a few pounds again this year. No, I hope you would listen to my winter edition today. I was 25 years old when I recounted this story. I introduced Scott to my parents after we were engaged, after a few years of dating. These were referred to as marriage greetings. Scott was liked by my parents, so the marriage discussion should have gone smoothly. But there was a problem. My older sister Sally, who is 2 years older than I am, was oddly obsessed with Scott when she got home from work. Sisters are able to comprehend one another's emotions and ideas. Scott had captured her heart at first sight. I thought it was a whim, but my sister reddened and gripped Scott's hand hard when they shook hands. Her eyes were always dreamy, even when she was speaking. She must have done it unintentionally, but I don't think it's right for a sister to act that way towards her younger sister's partner. Since human emotions are unpredictable, I kept acting as though I didn't see anything, since I thought my sister wouldn't seek a committed relationship. But when Scott was gone, my sister, who was only wearing a towel and had just gotten out of the bathtub, came up to me. When she said, "You should call off the engagement," she said, "You can find someone more suitable, and that man is a philanderer." She persisted in disparaging Scott, although her accusations lacked evidence. "Why do you think he's a playboy?" I inquired. "It's a woman's intuition," said my sister. "There has never been a boyfriend for my sister. Given her lack of experience with the other sex, how could I trust a woman's intuition? Consequently, I believed that I should have faith in Scott's character, which I had seen throughout the years. Of course, I didn't take my sister's advice too seriously and simply said, "Yeah, I'll be careful," dismissing it. Ever since, Scott has come to our house a lot. I cordially welcomed him over, as he stated that he wished to establish a positive relationship with my family. My parents were happy with the response, and I hoped that my future spouse would have a good relationship with his parents. My sister attempted to establish a positive relationship with Scott in a different way, even though it should have been done that way. Scott claims that she grabbed his arm, squeezed her chest against him, and said, "Don't you think Marianne is immature?" while I was away. She even purposefully failed to reveal her pants and begged for his contact information. Scott said that it was so ridiculous that it was humorous, but if he had been the type of man to take it seriously, I would have been quite concerned. Since she was my sister, Scott couldn't completely reject her, so my sister believed there was a chance. She always greeted him with a kind voice and said, "Hey." Even though it began with love at first sight, she was also moved by Scott's employment at a major corporation. "He's dependable, has the type of face I like, and is a good man who provides security for the future," she continued. She was completely captivated by him. Despite seeing my sister acting inappropriately, my parents remained silent. Actually, my parents' silence towards my sister is nothing new. To be honest, my sister has always been the kind of person that struggles with everything. For example, she magically melts a plastic dish that isn't heat-resistant when asked to reheat the side dishes. She struggled academically and athletically, frequently missing swimming lessons due to different excuses such as foot pain, illness, or skin problems. She struggled at school, athletics, and housework. To be honest, she doesn't have a really striking appearance either. Nevertheless, My parents treat her differently only because she is the oldest daughter, and they covertly place the responsibility of providing for her on me. In other words, I've been advised repeatedly to make her stand out without drawing attention to myself. Being treated so differently as siblings is unfair. But perhaps my parents feel even more terrible for her, since they perceive her as a helpless little girl. Oddly enough, I've always been the kind of person that gets things done fast and efficiently. Maybe the adults thought it was boring to teach someone who could do everything by herself. I can therefore easily handle the responsibility of providing for my sister. And occasionally, I purposefully pretend to be the one who is unable in public. I started to rebel against my parents and behave independently as I grew out of my adolescence and realized that carrying on in this manner would result in me failing my examinations. I would have definitely become helpless if I had persisted in complying. Although I lost my sister's backing because I disobeyed, our friendship was never really strained. We could have a normal conversation, and occasionally, I would even provide advice on her problems. I still believe that our family was completely normal, despite some warped elements, such as my sister's animosity and our overprotectiveness towards her. However, because Scott did not feel the same way about my sister, the equilibrium was upset. I can't accept that my younger sister is getting married before me. My sister shouted these remarks to our parents the night before our wedding. When Dad says, "Don't say that you will find a good partner soon too, Sally," I agree. It's not like that, Sally. Typically, the younger sister marries after the older sister. It's premature for her. However, isn't the wedding tomorrow? Mom, what are you saying? Do you not give a damn about me? I will become the pathetic elder sister that is overshadowed by her little sister. That's not true. I listened silently from the hallway that evening to the heated conversations between my sister and our parents. Does my sister have to marry first? Waiting for her to be married would cause me to age significantly very quickly. What is she actually thinking? I assumed that after she complained, she would calm down. Please be content with the fact that Mom and Dad won't be at the wedding tomorrow, Sally. What? These remarks startled me. My mother and father both expressed regret to my sister and decided not to attend my wedding. What is this? They seem to be members of my sister's cult. This goes beyond simple luxury. Nevertheless, my sister let out an unhappy sigh. All right, I'll give in. Permit her to be married without anyone noticing. She obviously does not want me to wed Scott, most likely because she is attracted to him. It's not real. Because of my sister's unrequited love, a wedding without my parents' presence is becoming a reality. Then came the day of the wedding. Even though it was a celebratory day, my anxiousness kept me up at night. Of fact, it was the uneasiness of remembering the conversations between my sister and my parents that kept me awake, not the anticipation. When my parents informed my sister that they would not be attending, I will never forget the contented look on her face. I informed Scott and his parents at the location that I would not be there. I'm sorry, I added. My family will not be going because my sister is against this marriage. Making the announcement was devastating. The fact that some parents refused to go to their own daughter's wedding was so shocking to my in-laws. After I told them my story, they fell silent for a bit. There was a somber atmosphere in such a momentous occasion. My mother-in-law grabbed my hand right away. My father-in-law touched our hand with his own. Remember that your relatives are present? Don't let this be a depressing day. Why don't you just smile? I couldn't stop crying when my mother-in-law stated that with such warmth. Scott gave me a gentle head rub as he noticed that I was crying. Marianne, I'm here as your husband, so please stop saying the family isn't attending, he added. Scott and my in-laws rushed to console me, telling me not to cry. Even though they were kidding, they said, "You're the bride, and your makeup will run." Marianne, it may be difficult with your family back home, but this new life you're starting should be a wonderful beginning, my mother-in-law added after giving me a close look. Together, let's start your own family. Despite my sense of desolation, my mother-in-law gave me a solid embrace. My father-in-law and Scott did the same. Like my mother-in-law remarked, I persuaded myself it was all right. This is meant to be a fresh start. I made a commitment to start my own happy family, and on that day, I married Scott. It's been 15 years. My spouse and I had 2 sons and a daughter during that time. My strong, capable daughter watches over her 2 mischievous brothers who occasionally cause chaos around the house. Stop it now, I say in a voice that even surprises me. Scott was doing well at work. We had a solid existence and had purchased a home. But then there were unannounced guests. My mother, father, and sister were the ones. I had avoided contact with my family after getting married and had not provided them with my new address. Nevertheless, they managed to locate our home and arrived without warning. Naturally, I said, "What do you want?" rather than a friendly greeting such, "Long time no see," when they first emerged. My sister said, "I have a favor to ask of you." "It's something only you can do for us," my parents added, looking at me earnestly. "What's happening?" After 15 years apart, what could they possibly need from me? I listened to my mother speak, half in terror and half in eagerness. "We want you to give Scott to your sister." "What?" She said something that startled Scott and me. "Wait a minute. Why do you mean I need to give Scott away?" Both of my parents glanced aside, appearing guilty when I asked them this pointed question. My sister was the only one still feeling proud and smug. The fact that she is still unmarried and is 42 this year is problematic, since I didn't understand my father's reasoning. Scott had the same bewilderment. Actually, the company she worked for recently went under, and she's currently unemployed. That's difficult. We are concerned about your sister's future because she is unmarried and unemployed. Given that you are sisters, we hope you can understand. You ought to have the same sentiments. In my thoughts, I said, "No, I don't think so," in response to their solemn expressions, wondering what they would say next. My father's slow speech annoyed me, so I refrained from making pointless remarks in an attempt to speed up his response. She has always had feelings for Scott, and as a result, she remains alone. Scott and you have a happy marriage, haven't you? Would you kindly give him to your sister for the remainder of her life? What? What do you mean? Observing their responses, Scott also appeared at a loss for words. "Please," my parents were begging, while my sister continued to act arrogantly. My parents always catered to her demands, so she appeared sure she would have Scott. This was a ridiculous request, yet it's no wonder she believed it. Scott drew me aside as I was clutching my head and said in a whisper, "This might actually be a chance." "Really?" "Yeah, because this is like that joke you made when you were drunk coming to life." "Then shall we go for it?" Then we got up and turned back to my parents and sister. "Do you really love Scott that much?" My sister was taken aback by my inquiry and couldn't contain her surprise as she repeatedly said, "Yes, yes. I had loved him for a very long time." Really? To still love him after 15 years, despite the fact that he is the husband of another woman, shows a great deal of affection. Yes, watching you and Scott together has been really upsetting. I should have been the one. Her statements were so full of conviction that Scott and I found it difficult to remain composed. "I give up. I'll leave you alone if you truly love him." This statement stunned the parents. My mom responded right away. "Really? You also love Scott, don't you?" When Scott said, "No, actually, Scott, to tell you the truth, I've always liked Sally," my sister's face lit up with joy. "Really?" I was aware. "Your eyes were always so lovely, And you never objected when I gave you a hug. I've been holding out. At last, the time has arrived. I found it difficult to keep from laughing. I could see Scott's shoulders trembling even though he was acting like he was crying. We'll simply have to endure this time for a little while longer. From now on, we'll always be together, Scott remarked abruptly. My sister began talking to him in such a casual way. It sounded oddly natural. She must have had a satisfying romance with Scott in her head for the previous 15 years. I'm glad, Sally. Please be my support going forward, Scott grinned. Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to quit my job. Really? My sister's look changed from one of quick blush to one of disbelief. Sally, I want to spend my entire life with you. I'm leaving my work to be by your side no matter what. What? I refuse to leave the house anymore. I'll watch you do housekeeping from behind while I accompany you to the restroom. My sister was temporarily taken aback by Scott's upbeat tone before she started to panic. Our parents were also unable to conceal their disruption. But I'm not working either, and this is troubling. What's concerning? We have nothing to be afraid of if we're united. To be happy, we don't need money. But we have to pay for insurance these days, don't we? The past is no longer the case. Without money, we are unable to love one another. I'm not saying that. However, my sister's eyes snapped to attention. I replied swiftly, Scott, if we do end up divorcing, I'll be taking a generous share of the assets, so you better pay up. Scott laughed and said, Don't worry, your sister and parents will take care of the payments. When our parents heard this, they both became pale and exchanged glances. It's difficult to say, Sally, but this is incorrect. My father responded, You're stealing a husband from your sister. Exactly, Sally, that is indeed. My mom stumbled. Where was the passion that had been there before? Our parents seemed to have abruptly changed course. What are you discussing? You said you would give me Scott, my sister sobbed. But Sally, that was before. I was not interested in hearing it. Doesn't anyone support me? In a fit of rage, my sister yanked my mother's hair. My father found it difficult to mediate. It resembled witnessing a complete anarchy. As everyone's focus shifted to him, Scott composedly said in the middle of the confusion, To be honest, you're not my type, he said. As Marianne's sister, I respect you. But other than that, I don't really want to talk to you much, especially with that skyward gaze. Yes, that really irritates me. It's really hard to feel like someone still has feelings for me that haven't been expressed. My sister and our parents were both stunned by Scott's direct comments. My sister said, But Scott, what was all that earlier? Please refrain from acting so casually around other people's husbands. He could never fall in love with you. We live a happy life with our family. I stopped my sister, who was approaching Scott with a pale face, as I was saying this. What? You fooled me? Yelled my sister. How can you believe you are loved by someone who hasn't spoken to you in 15 years? That's unrealistic, isn't it? I pushed her. My sister's face flushed, and she started crying, obviously from frustration. Perhaps if you were a really beautiful woman, but nobody finds charm in someone who is jobless, reliant on their parents, and powerless to accomplish anything because her mother has always taken care of the housework. Any marriage wouldn't last long with those things at your age, I stated bluntly. Behind me, Scott chuckled softly. My sister started crying uncontrollably after realizing how true these comments were. Despite our parents' best efforts to console her, their faces were bewildered, as though they were saying, It's really true. I'm not giving Scott up because of this. In light of that, Sally, please give up. My sister started crying uncontrollably at this point. For an adult, it was an unsightly sight. My thought was, she really hasn't grown up. Please learn from this experience and refrain from interacting with us in the future. Don't expect any assistance from us in the future, regardless of how much difficulties you encounter. I then carefully shut the front door. In response to the kids' inquiries, I said, "It's Halloween season, so it seems a ghost came early." "Let's exorcise the spirit," said my oldest. We could hear my sister crying, but I put an end to that thought. It was almost like a wailing ghost outside. She has been unmarried for 5 more years. She was prohibited from matchmaking events when she was fired for inappropriate behavior and causing difficulty by pushing into marriage too quickly, even though she was able to obtain employment. She might remain unmarried for the rest of her life. Even after exhausting themselves, my parents continue to work part-time to save money for her. They most likely understand that they cannot depend on her to take care of them in the future. I hope they suffer the repercussions of treating her badly. Thanks to my bright kids and a steady-earning husband, I can now spend my days as a stay-at-home mom without worrying about my kids' school tuition. I occasionally ponder whether working outside would have enabled me to swiftly burn off the calories I consumed over the year-end feast. I'm trying to talk my already slim kid out of starting to diet as she enters her growth phase. "You can think about dieting when you're older, like me," I tell her. My 2 sons enjoy dancing, and they recently won multiple awards for their performance at a local festival. "We're going to be in BTS one day," they declare with confidence, so I genuinely hope the group stays together until my sons are adults. My in-laws, who I love just as much as my own parents, come to see us often, and we eat delicious meals together. We are excited to spend quality time together and have planned a spa trip for when the kids have spring break. Even though I had a lot of challenges before getting married, my everyday life has been happy since then, strengthening the real links that bind families. I hope everyone stays healthy and lives a long life, so we may spend more valuable time with our family. Samantha is my name. I've spent the last 18 years living in the shadows, more especially the shadow of my twin sister, Emily. We have the same face and were born on the same day, but that's about all we have in common. Bright, lively, and adored by many, Emily was like the sun. I, on the other hand, was like the moon, calm, reserved, and constantly obscured by the sun. Emily was the ideal daughter for James and Linda Chen, our parents. She was outgoing and vivacious, participated actively in extracurricular activities, and did exceptionally well at school. I was the other daughter, though, and I wasn't as intelligent, as gregarious, or as flawless as Emily. I made a valiant effort to get my parents' attention from an early age. I made an effort to do well in school and even tried my hand at sports, but I was never able to shake Emily's shadow. "Samantha, why can't you try harder like Emily?" One heard this sentence over and over. My heart ached a little more each time. Despite being my twin sister, Emily and I seemed to be in completely separate universes. Her environment was lively, full of admiration and friends. I lived in a dismal world full of longing and loneliness. This disparity was much more noticeable in high school. Emily received multiple honors and was voted president of the student body. In the meantime, I was drawing covertly in the corner of the art club. My only way out was to draw, and I was free on the canvas. I could follow my creativity and create without being compared to anyone. But my parents didn't even recognize this talent. "Art? In the future, what will you do with that?" my dad used to say. "Take a look at Emily. She will be attending medical school. A bright future looks like that." My heart shut down furthermore each time I heard those words. I was embarrassed that I couldn't live up to my parents' expectations and emulate Emily. However, I was also upset that they weren't able to embrace me for who I am. I had a complex relationship with Emily. She was sure of her love for me, but she also recognized our differences. Her attempts to console me occasionally caused greater pain. The distance between us seemed to grow as a result of her sympathy. "It's all right, Samantha." Emily would frequently remark, "You have other talents." However, I always felt that, but not as much as me, was meant behind those remarks. We graduated from high school at the same time in our last year. Emily, the honor student, spoke during the event. I watched from the audience as our parents looked at her with pride. I felt totally invisible at that time. My parents hosted a lavish celebration for Emily following the graduation ceremony. There was a festive atmosphere throughout the house, so I shut myself in my room and drew. Nobody came to find me. As I lay in bed that night, I thought back on my 18 years of existence, always in Emily's shadow, unable to live up to my parents' expectations, and battling to define my own worth. My heart ached at the idea of carrying on living this way. But a resolve developed in that suffering. Living under someone else's shadow is over. I made a commitment to live my own life. Unbeknownst to me at the time, that choice would have a significant impact on my life and reveal a secret about our family. Our lives started to take an unexpected turn a week after graduation. My father abruptly got up at breakfast to make a significant announcement. "Everyone, to celebrate Emily's excellent grades, we've decided to take a family trip to Hawaii." Emily cheered, and my mom broke down in tears of happiness. I simply swirled my porridge in the interim. With a turn toward me, my father said, "Samantha, I'm sorry, but could you stay home and watch the house?" Time seemed to pause at that point. My mother's tears and Emily's applause vanished. I could only hear my dad say, "House sitting." I succeeded in saying, "Yes." "Someone must take care of the house," my father said lightly. "Besides, this is Emily's trip. You get it, don't you? You get it? What is there to comprehend? Like her, I graduated. I am a member of this family as well. However, I had the distinct impression that I was not a member of their family at that time." I said, "I understand," in a quiet voice. No one appeared to be aware of my distress. I isolated myself in my room and confronted the canvas that night while my family packed. I used forceful strokes to convey my loneliness, grief, and rage. Emily knocked on my door and came into my room. "Samantha, are you okay?" Her voice was tinged with concern. I said, without looking back, "Yeah, I'm okay. Enjoy yourself." After a moment of hesitation, Emily apologized. "I spoke with Dad, but it's all right." I cut her off, saying, "I'm all right. Go have fun." With a groan, Emily walked out of the room. Although I knew it meant nothing, I was nonetheless happy that she had made an effort to talk to Dad on my behalf. I was simply that unimportant in this family. I stood at the door the following morning as my family departed. As she gave me a hug, my mother murmured, "Take care." My dad simply gave me a shoulder pat. Emily had a contrite expression. The house was suddenly very silent after they left. I had never felt so alone before. However, I also experienced an odd feeling of liberation. I had all of my freedom that week. I stayed in my room and kept drawing for the first 2 days. Just staring at the painting, I forgot about meal times. I went outside for the first time on the 3rd day. Gazing up at the blue sky, I strolled across the neighboring park. I questioned whether Hawaii's skies were any more azure. An unexpected event occurred on the 4th morning. The doorbell rang. I opened the door slowly. I didn't recognize the woman standing there, but I gasped when I saw her face. She resembled my mother in her advanced years. The woman said, "Hello, Samantha," with a nice grin. "I'm your mother's cousin, Caroline." I couldn't speak. I was unaware that my mother had a cousin. "May I come in?" Caroline inquired. Caroline came into the living room, and all I could do was nod. She glanced about before focusing on my wall paintings. "These are wonderful," she said. "Did you draw these?" I gave a bashful nod. "Yes, it's only a pastime." Caroline gave me a direct glance. "It's more than just a pastime. Samantha, you have talent." I was greatly moved by those words. My folks had never given me such high praise. Caroline started inquiring enthusiastically about my paintings, including my methods, inspirations, and future goals. I gradually opened up and started talking about my ideas. I experienced an odd feeling as we conversed. Caroline listened to me as though we had been friends for ages. She had empathy and understanding in her eyes. "Samantha," Caroline informed me gravely, "you're quite talented. You ought to be given the chance to cultivate it." She pulled a check from her pocketbook as she said this. "This is for nurturing your talent," Caroline said as she presented me with the check. When I saw the sum, $50,000, I was astounded. It was unthinkable. But, to my confusion, I said, "I can't accept this much money." Caroline gave a soft smile. "Grab it. You are investing in your future with this. I have faith in you." My eyes welled up with tears. Someone saw my potential and had faith in my future for the first time in my life. "You are unique, Samantha," Caroline whispered as she gave me a hug. "Remember that." I looked at the check for a long time after she departed. My life could be changed by this piece of paper. My pulse raced at the thought, but I was also nervous. If my parents learned, how would they respond? How would Emily feel? And why had Carolyn shown up out of the blue and handed me so much cash? I had a lot of unanswered questions, but I knew that a significant change was about to occur in my life. My anxiousness was unbearable on the day my family got back from Hawaii. How can I explain the check and Caroline's visit? Was an explanation even necessary? The home was filled with happy voices and the sound of the front door opening. Emily entered first, happy and with a sunburn on her face. "Samantha, I'm back." She hurried to give me a hug. I took a small step back and simply nodded. After a moment of bewilderment, Emily's smile swiftly reverted to its typical state. Our parents arrived with their bags as well. My father was as stately as ever, but my mother was exhausted. My father inquired, "Samantha, was everything okay at home?" With a flat, "Yes, there were no problems," I answered. "Good," he replied, and the discussion came to an end. My family started to unpack and reminisce about their journey. I observed their happy grins from a distance. Once more, I questioned whether I really belonged in this household. We seemed to be in different planets as we sat around the table at dinner time. While I ate in silence, Emily and my folks talked eagerly about Hawaii. However, the quiet moment was short-lived. "What's this?" Suddenly, my mother's voice raised. She discovered the check while going through a stack of mail on the table. My heart began to race. Caroline's check was utterly forgotten. My father's eyes widened when he took up the check. $50,000 sent to Samantha. What is the purpose of this? The room's atmosphere froze. Our parents' gaze grew suspicious as Emily gaped at me in disbelief. After taking a long breath, I gradually started to describe Caroline's visit, how she had complimented my paintings, and how she wanted me to utilize this check to further develop my skills. There was a long pause when I was done. I thought it was very long. Emily spoke out abruptly. "Isn't that unjust? To be paid so much by a stranger while we were away?" The sight of my sister startled me. Her eyes were full of jealousy. "Emily," I replied softly, "you were given a Hawaiian vacation as a gift. I got this as a gift. It's not solely yours, though." Emily spoke louder. "Aren't we identical twins? We ought to divulge every information." I became enraged. Give? So far, you've monopolized our parents' love, admiration, and attention. It's mine this time. Samantha, went my father's piercing voice. Why is that attitude present? Express regret to Emily. Something broke inside of me at that very instant. The feelings that I had repressed for years poured forth. Sorry? Me? I got to my feet, my voice faltering. Who ought to offer an apology? Who has consistently ignored me, loved only Emily, failed to see my potential, and persisted in denying my existence? My parents looked at me with astonishment. Emily appeared on the verge of tears. You all, said I. Have you ever truly loved me, or have you just seen me as Emily's shadow? I interrupted my mother as she began to speak. Enough of it! I don't want to spend any more time with a family like them. After that, I hurried to my room, shut the door, fell into the bed, and let my long-suppressed tears fall freely. Eventually, someone knocked on the door. Emily's voice was heard. Samantha, can we talk? After some hesitation, I opened the door. Emily was crying, too, and her eyes were red. I'm sorry, she whispered softly. I've been struggling, too. I waited in silence for her to say something. I was jealous of you, but our parents' expectations were too high. You appear to lead such a free life. Her remarks caught me off guard. It never occurred to me that Emily would be jealous of me. We really didn't understand each other, I said. Emily approached me after giving me a nod. Abruptly, she gave me a hug. She said, Can't we start over? As real sisters? I gave her a hug in return and nodded softly. With our tears, I felt the years of miscommunication and jealousy fade away. This moving moment of reunion, nevertheless, didn't last long. An even more startling reality was revealed the next day. Our father started breakfast with a somber expression. Samantha, Emily, there's something I need to tell you, he replied. We exchanged nervous glances. He began by saying, About the woman yesterday, Caroline, with deliberate word choice. The truth is, she is your real mother. The room's air froze. Emily and I both tensed up like lightning. What? What do you mean? Emily's voice was shaking as she asked. Through sobs, our mother, who had reared us, started to explain. She is a sister of Caroline. When we were conceived, Caroline was unmarried and pregnant, so the family chose to adopt us in order to preserve their good name. But why now? I was able to say. Caroline was recently diagnosed with a serious illness, she replied. She wanted you to know the truth. This revelation completely upended our universe. In a moment, what we had believed fell apart. I stumbled out of the room after getting up. I was followed by Emily. We went outside to the garden and sat next to one another in silence. We were filled with feelings that were beyond words. Emily said, Samantha, what should we do now? I took a deep breath out. Honestly, I don't know. But there's one thing I'm sure of, I said. What? That we have each other. Emily gripped my hand and smiled a little. I had the impression that we had become sisters at that point, not just by blood, but also by heart. We were also prepared to start a new life together. Our house was like a quiet storm in the weeks after the disclosure. Life went on as usual on the outside, but profound changes were taking place on the inside. I started spending more time with Emily than I had previously. We cleared up years of miscommunication by discussing parts of our lives we had never known. One day, Emily entered my room and said, Samantha, I would like to see more of your paintings. I showed her my sketchbook after hesitating. Her face was serious as she studied each page carefully. This is amazing, Emily cried out. Why didn't you show me sooner? I gave a shrug. I assumed there would be no interest. Emily appeared dejected. Her words, I'm sorry I didn't notice your talent either. made me feel better. I felt as though I had at last gotten the acknowledgement I had so desperately sought. Our connection with James and Linda, our adopted parents, remained complex in the meantime. They kept apologizing and expressing regret over and over again. But the scars from years of mistreatment were difficult for me in particular to repair. I was unable to pardon them. I couldn't forget the days when Emily was given preference and I was ignored. After supper one night, James came up to me. He paused before saying, "Samantha, about your paintings. Could I see your work if you don't mind?" Despite my amazement, I remained calm. "Why are you interested in my paintings now?" James let out a long sigh. "We committed a lot of errors. One of them was ignoring your talent. I reasoned that there might still be time to get started." I gazed at him. I saw sincere remorse in his eyes. My heart was still not healed, though. After saying, "I'll think about it," I went back to my room. I wrestled with my emotions for a long period that evening. Could I pardon Linda and James? Could we establish a fresh friendship with them? Finding the solution was difficult, but one thing was certain. I would never longer live in someone else's shadow. It was up to me to choose my life. I asked Emily to go out with me the following day. We went to the home of our true mother, Caroline. We held each other's hands tightly as we pressed the doorbell. Caroline emerged as the door opened, her eyes filled with tears. "Samantha, Emily," she murmured, her voice shaking. "Thank you for coming." We gave Caroline a quiet hug. Emotions beyond words swept over us at that time. This embrace felt like a promise of a fresh start, even though it would take time to fill the years of emptiness. We saw that the walls of Caroline's home were painted when we first arrived. She was also an artist. "I was young and immature when you were conceived," Caroline said in a tremulous voice. "I didn't believe I could provide the ideal life for you." I listened carefully, as did Emily. Caroline described the circumstances around her choice, her subsequent life, and how she had kept watch over us. "But my decision must have hurt you," she added, blotting her eyes. "Samantha, in particular." "I apologize." "Caroline, no, Mom," I murmured, taking a long breath. "I'm glad you saw my potential and told us the truth, even though we've been harmed in a lot of ways. We have time now to get to know each other," Emily said, nodding as well. "You can take your time." Caroline gave us another hug as her face lit up with relief. We started going to see Caroline on a regular basis after that day. She taught us painting skills, shared anecdotes about her life, and we grew closer over time. The connection with Linda and James, however, continued to be complex. They made an effort to demonstrate their efforts, but it was difficult to just resolve because of the accumulation of years. Linda knocked on the door of my room one day. "Samantha, can we talk?" There was a hint of nervousness in her voice. Despite my hesitation, I opened the door. After entering, Linda looked at my works in silence for a time before breaking down in tears. She said, "I'm sorry, Samantha," with tears in her eyes. "I disregarded your sentiments and your abilities. I was an awful mother." Confused but composed, I took a seat next to her. "I wasn't perfect either," I replied quietly, "but what matters is what we do from here." Linda gave me a quick glance and a small nod. "You're correct. Can we begin again?" But I was unable to pardon her. Forgiveness was out of the question for me because of the history of lack of affection. I made a big decision the following day. Together with Emily, Linda, and James, I said, "I think it's time for me to leave this house." James and Linda tried to talk me out of it after we were silent for a while, but I was already convinced. When I was leaving the house a few days later, I informed Emily, "I'm going to art college." "You should follow your talent," she said. "We will fully support your choice," he said, giving me an enthusiastic hug. You deserve it, big sister. You will become an amazing artist. I moved out on my own and entered art college a few months later. I started to completely exhibit my abilities in the campus setting. After graduating from medical school, Emily pursued her own career. Gradually, Caroline and I also became closer, and she started to play a significant role in our lives. My artwork was displayed at a university exhibition one day. I was shocked to see Emily and Caroline. It made me happy to see people standing in front of my paintings and feeling touched. In my heart, I knew that this was my clan. I think we may become stronger by accepting this truth and moving on, even though it may not be ideal, and there may still be scars. Emily joined me and grasped my hand. She said, "We've come a long way, haven't we?" I nodded and grinned. Yes, we have. However, the actual start is now.